Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shadow at Night. This is Wednesday, June 26th, 2024. I have to admit I'm a little bit flummoxed right now. After agreeing to an interview with Chris Sky on Monday night, he didn't show. And so I chalked it up to a miscommunication and a faulty telephone network where he is right now in Istanbul, Turkey. And so we rescheduled for tonight. And so far, no Chris. Interesting. Now, I understand that it's 8 hours ahead where he is from where I am right now, so that's 4 a.m. It's 4 a.m. Turkey time where Chris is right now. Even though we've been in communication for the last couple of days setting this up, I gave him a 5-hour warning text earlier, which he responded to. Got it, he said. Send me the link on Telegram, he said, which I did. And I also texted him the link to make sure that he has the link. And so far, oh, wait a minute. Hold on just a second. Wait. There he is, Chris Sky from Istanbul, Turkey. I thought you weren't going to show up tonight, my friend. I was a little bit worried. I was just telling my audience, where's Chris? This is the second time.
Well, the first time it was because we had the phone problem. I don't know why, but for some reason when people try to send texts to me out here, sometimes they go through, sometimes they don't. And for about 4 hours that day, it just wasn't working. Then when I noticed you messaged me on Telegram, it's all good.
Right. Okay, so look, I want to take care of my advertiser right off the top of the show. I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy that, I know, because I know it's early where you are, so thanks for making the time. I'm going to come right back to you if that's okay. All right, Chris Sky is going to rejoin in just a second. Interesting. I was a little bit worried. There's a video of Chris. We're going to play this for you right now. A video of Chris leaving Canada. He put this up this video was put up about a month ago. I think it was probably recorded a little bit before that. Let's listen to this.
What's going on, everybody? I'm going to give you a little insight to how hypocritical and retarded the average Canadian is today. So, because I know, and many others know, that Canada has reached its peak and it's at the point where every single year from now it's going to get worse. We're all supposed to stay here and put up with it, and we're cowards, we're losers, we're anything else that you can call us if we want to leave Canada. Meanwhile, how many of you morons calling us names can trace your family history back to 1870s Canada? I'm willing to bet my testicles that 99% of you morons talking shit, families came from somewhere at some point, and it wasn't Canada. So why are they not cowards for leaving wherever they came from to come to Canada looking for a better life? But now that Canada's turning to shit, anybody who wants to leave Canada to go somewhere else looking for a better life are cowards and worse.
All right, if Chris wants to extrapolate on that, he can. That was the number one question that was asked when I put up the promo posts on social media that Chris was going to be on the show earlier today. Well, why did he leave in the first place? And I know that he's answered that question a million times, but if he wants to extrapolate on the video, he absolutely can. The Shadow at Night live stream is brought to you by Canada Nano Silver, CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Are you tired of battling muscle soreness after intense workouts or long days? Are you in search of a solution that provides unparalleled comfort and relaxation? Canada Nano Silver proudly presents Recover Silver Biotics Revolutionary Muscle Cream, designed to be your powerful ally in soothing tired muscles and helping you conquer each day with ease. Recover is not just another muscle cream, it's the next generation of muscle cream crafted with cutting-edge technology and premier ingredients. Recover offers a level of comfort and rejuvenation that you've never experienced before. Whether you're an athlete pushing your limits, a weekend warrior, or someone facing the daily grind, Recover is here to support you every step of the way. Recover, the latest product out now from Canada Nano Silver. You can find it online, CanadaNanoSilver.ca. You can find the retail locations. They are exploding all across the country on the retail locations tab at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. And if you would like to become a retailer of these excellent products, get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Let's bring Chris back. Chris, I know you've been asked that question a million times. You've answered that question a million times, and I know you want to talk about something else tonight. Diagolon, Jeremy Mackenzie is going to be the topic of discussion, but people want to know. That was the number one question, and there was probably about 300 comments in that thread on social media this afternoon. Why did you leave Canada, and do you plan to come back at some point?
Well, first of all, I never left Canada. I'm just in Turkey right now until August. I'll be back in Canada for a little while. Then I have business to take care of in Mexico and Colombia. And I'm not leaving Canada 100%. What I'm doing is I'm setting up roots, businesses, real estate in other countries. I do not want to keep all my eggs in one basket. I still have a property in Alberta, 10 acres with the wolf sanctuary where I had 11 dogs there at one point due to old age and other factors. Now I have 7 dogs there left. So I am keeping that property. I am keeping my Canadian passport, but I'm just not deciding to keep all my assets into Canada. And there's very good reason for that. Number one, I've had a family business since I was about 13 years old. And now all of a sudden their new tax rate is almost 70%. So if you make a $250,000 profit in your business, the government now wants to take $175,000 for themselves and leave you with $75,000. So that is why you're seeing an exodus, record numbers of Canadians. And it's not the stupid and weak and broke. It's the smart, the wealthy, and the ones with foresight, because they understand that they're under attack. They understand that their businesses are no longer going to be able to grow and thrive, but it's only going to be the opposite. Their businesses are going to be able to make them less and less money until they're losing money. And nobody goes into business to lose money. Everybody goes into business to make money. And Canada is no longer a country for either domestic or foreign investors to make money. Now that we have these ridiculous tax regimes, now that we have all these new laws coming out that are going to crush our freedom, like Bill 63, Online Hate Crimes Act. Oh, in order to make a more inclusive online experience, we're going to put you in jail for life if you say something that we don't like. We have a country that is so demoralized and degenerate. Remember when Pride was only a parade, and Pride was a day, then Pride was a week, then Pride was a month. Now Pride is an entire season in Canada. It runs from June to the end of September. And not only does that, they changed the indecency laws to allow grown males to literally walk around naked. And if you happen to be walking in downtown Toronto with your children and you see a group of gay naked men with their penises out in your face, the cops will tell you that that's perfectly normal. They can't do anything about it. And we're literally promoting and encouraging demoralization. And they call it pride, which is even better, because what is pride? Pride is not just one of the 7 deadly sins. Pride is the root of all sin. So when you embrace pride, you're embracing sloth, envy, lust, gluttony, sloth, the rest of them, all at the same time. So we're literally putting Canada on a path to actually destroy the country. If you look in the 60s, and this applies to all of North America, children born out of wedlock was around 3%. If you look at the stats today, and I thought I was making it up in my head because so many girls that try to talk to me, I realized they all have children and they have no fathers in the picture, and they're not even 25 years old, and most of the time their baby is from a different race. And this is now like normalized in our country. And when I looked up the statistics, it's now 40% of all births in North America are not even to unwed parents, but to single mothers. The attack on the family unit, anybody that knows anything about politics, anything that knows anybody about life, attack on the family unit is the number one priority when trying to destroy and demoralize a country. And we've seen that in Canada and the Western world more than we're seeing it anywhere else. Now let's look at the economic situation of Canada. Our GDP is over 100%. Our debt to GDP ratio is over 100% of our GDP, with no end in sight. In fact, when you look at when they're adding jobs and they give out these job reports and say, "Oh, we added 150,000 jobs in Canada," 98% of those so-called jobs added are in government institutions. Now, the government's not adding to GDP. In fact, the government is the one spending our GDP. And how much of our GDP is our government spending? Well, the average government around the world, and even in third world countries, will spend around 20% of the overall tax revenue given to it. So then we have money to spend on other things. In Canada, because we're so socialist and moving so far towards the communist direction, we now spend over 41% of all our annual revenue on our government. So what else does that mean? That means that our private sector is dwindling, and the private sector is the only thing that makes money in Canada, dwindling to the point that our government, our public institutions are outnumbering the growth of our private sector by 400%. Let that sink in. In Canada, we also don't have the luxury of Great Britain with a pound, which is a really strong currency, or the euro, which is a really strong currency, or even the US dollar, after losing world reserve currency status, is still a very strong currency around the world because so many countries hold US dollars, they can't even dump them if they wanted to because they'll be shooting themselves in the foot. So it might be a so-called dead currency, but it's definitely the walking dead, and it's still going strong in currency markets. What do we have in Canada? Canada is basically monopoly money. You go to Great Britain or UK with Canadian money, you're spending $1.72 right now for every $1 that you want to buy. And things in Britain are a lot cheaper. Like I could go to the supermarket and buy a steak for maybe £3. That even with the exchange rate, that's not even $7. But you go to a Canadian supermarket, you'll find the same steaks for $30, $40, $50 each. People cannot even get groceries for under $200 for a single person in Canada. And now we're moving towards the whole 15-minute city agenda, full-fledged, full steam ahead, where they're advertising so-called condos. They call them micro condos, 280 square feet. And you're supposed to live there with a family. There's no bedroom, one bathroom, a common living space with a tiny kitchen attached, and a balcony. And you're supposed to live there with your wife and your kid or your two kids, and you're all supposed to share a bed like it's the Philippines or something. And people are gushing over how wonderful these condos are. And how much do you think a 280 square foot condo in downtown Toronto costs if you want to rent it? $2,200 or more a month. And how much do you think it wants to cost if you want to buy it? Over $600,000 for under 300 square feet. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It doesn't come with car parking. It comes with bicycle parking because they don't want you leaving your block. They don't want you traveling. They don't want you doing road trips. They don't want you flying. They're even talking about putting quotas on flights or special taxes on flights that if you fly more than once a year internationally, they're going to charge you up the ass to make it virtually next to impossible for the average person to fly. The entirety of Canada is one giant experiment for the World Economic Forum. They did everything they can to steal all the wealth and prosperity from this country, to the point where the only wealth and prosperity left in Canada is our private home ownership and the small businesses. And as we saw in the pandemic, we lost over 30% of our small businesses, which make up 99% of all the businesses in Canada. And now in 2024, when they want people to pay back all that pandemic loan money that they gave, we had a record number of businesses going bankrupt in the first quarter of 2024, more than ever on record. So we are seeing Canada self-destructing. We have seen that they've already completely collapsed the economy. And what they're doing now is literally a controlled demolition. Because if they let everything collapse all at once, Canadians might actually get upset and go in the streets and start protesting. So what they're doing, they already created a new budget with what, over $50 billion deficit when we're already $2 trillion in debt. Does that make sense to anybody with a brain? And does that make sense that they should be adding hundreds of thousands of government positions when we're already behind the eight ball? We're already going down the tubes. If you looked in Canada's quality of life in the early 1990s, which was the peak of Canada, by the way, the mid 1990s, we were in the top 10, something like 5 to 7. Amazing. And that's why Canada got this reputation for being such a great country. Fast forward to 2024, we're already 33rd, and we lost 8 positions between 2023 and 2024. In the 3 to 5 years, Canada is not even going to be listed as a top 50 country on the Numbeo Quality of Life Index, and it's simply because what you're getting for your money and your taxes just doesn't make sense. Our Canadian dollar might as well be monopoly money virtually everywhere else in the world. So it's not like we have an advantage there. Justin Trudeau sold our last ounce of gold reserves. So even countries like Cambodia or Bolivia literally have tons and tons of gold. What do we have in Canada? Zero. Not even enough to make a friggin' necklace for somebody. They've literally sold us down the river, and they're going after every bastion of wealth left in the country. And the last bastion of wealth left in the country are the few small businesses that haven't closed down, and they're closing down they're closing down not because they're going broke. They're closing down because these are businesses, and I'm talking about legacy businesses, people I know that have had businesses here for 60, 70 years. That make a substantial amount of money. We're not talking 7 figures, we're talking 9 figures. And when they run the numbers, they see that in 2025, their business ain't going to be able to grow anymore. Their profits are going to start dwindling. And within the next few years after that, they might not even make a profit anymore. So what are these people going to do? Are they going to stick it out and wait till they start losing money? Or are they just going to cash out now and leave? Well, we already know the answer. Record numbers of Canadians are leaving Canada for good, and the ones that are leaving are the smart, the wealthy, and the ones with foresight. And everybody that talks to me about, oh, he's leaving, he's a coward, he's this and that. I still have a property in Alberta where I have my wolf sanctuary, and I'm not planning on selling it. I'm not planning on relinquishing my Canadian citizenship, but I am planning on setting roots in other countries and creating businesses in other countries and creating wealth and a life in other countries where I believe we're going to have prosperity for decades to come. Canada is on a pathway where this is exactly what they're going to do, because I ran the numbers economically and I know how these evil people think. What the average Canadian can expect over the next, and I'm not talking 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I'm talking 20 plus years. If you look at the OECD index, which looks at the top 38 economies of the world, and Canada is still considered one of the top 38 countries in the world at that point. They say the Canadian economy is going to perform dead last out of all those countries for the next 40 years. 40 years, let that sink in. So your life is going to get worse every single year for decades to come. And what are they going to do? Well, they don't want riots in the streets, and they don't want mass exodus of Canadians as much as possible, but they do want to take control of your private property and turn you into renters of a 280 square foot, 15-minute city-style condo. They do want you to give up your car. They do want you to give up traveling. So what you're going to see in Canada, and I want people to really listen carefully to this and mark my words and quote me on this, is you're going to see a controlled collapse where you're going to see your average cost of living, and I'm talking about your mortgage, your rent, your fuel, your electricity, your food costs, going up an average of around 30% a year. And right off the top, that doesn't sound so bad. But when you do the math, that means that every 3 years from now, your cost of living is going to virtually double. So for the average Canadian making 50, 60 grand a year and living their life and paying their rent, paying their mortgage, going out for dinners, going out to hockey games, etc., in 3 years from now, it's going to cost you over $100,000 for that exact same lifestyle. In 6 years from now, it's going to cost you over $200,000 for that exact same lifestyle. So how many people are going to be able to keep up with that? Answer, very, very few. So what is their plan? Their plan is to attack everybody But their plan is to destroy the bottom 5 to 7% of the people that are just struggling to pay their rent, just struggling to pay their mortgage. Because if you do that every year, 95% of people are okay. They might have had to tighten their belt. They might have had to make a few sacrifices, but they didn't lose their homes. So they're like, okay, I'm still fine. But the bottom 5% did lose their homes. They're now renters for life. And if you do that for the next 10 years, now all of a sudden, the vast majority of Canadians are no longer owners, they're renters. And in fact, if you look at the statistics, we're already at the point where there's a record number of people that rent versus home ownership. In Montreal, for instance, 63% of all properties are now rented, not owned. And they won't be happy until it's 90% of properties that are now rented and owned. And while they're crushing you economically and crushing your future and making sure you have no future, they're also introducing new laws that is going to make it a dystopian place, especially for people like you and me that like to speak out. They have C-63 being passed, and it's going to be passed, the Online Hate Act, where they're saying they're trying to make a more inclusive online experience. When you read the fine print, it basically tells you that if they consider you guilty of a so-called hate crime, and hate becomes a broader definition every single day in Canada, you can now face life in prison for saying something that Justin Trudeau doesn't like. This comes on the heels of them already censoring media from all the other countries. They want Canadians to be completely isolated, completely away from all types of international information. And they want Canadians to still believe that Canada is the Canada it was in the 1990s, where it was one of the best countries in the world. We have an immigration crisis in Canada. Not only are they bringing millions of people here a year, third worlders that don't even speak our language and don't even hold our values and tradition, but hundreds of thousands of those people, once they get here, and we paid for them to get here, are being smuggled across the border into the United States for a better life. So we're literally just paying and paying and paying to become the world's shithole. And that's what Canada now is, a shithole. If you want to buy...
Let me stop you for 1 second. There's a lot of people, and I want to get back to the immigration question in just a second, because I think you were just about to start on that. But I spent the weekend at a conference here in Manitoba, and there was a lot of great speakers. There was a lot of attendees who seemed to be under the impression that when Pierre Poilievre wins government next year, or whenever the election is held, things are going to start to turn around. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Do you ever see Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau at the same press conference? They literally wear the same Ukrainian flag. They literally wear the same suit. And now Pierre Poilievre even put lifts in his shoes because they know he's going to be the next prime minister. If you look at Pierre Poilievre in 2021, Justin Trudeau towered over him, and it didn't make him look very prime ministerly. And his own biographies called him out as 5'8". Now, if you look at a brand new picture of him and Trudeau stand neck and neck to each other, and his biographies now call him 6'2". So a grown man miraculously grew 4 inches in the last 2 years. No, they just know that he's next to be the next figurehead of Canada, and to make him look more authoritarian to Canadians, they gave him the same thing they give for Tom Cruise in every one of his movies, 4-inch lifts in his shoes to make him look like more of a man than he is. They got rid of his glasses to make him look more of a buff and make him look less like a loser. But the reality is, who is Pierre Poilievre? Pierre Poilievre was an orphan adopted by a gay couple. So he was brought up into the exact same household as the liberal mindset. Ask Pierre Poilievre what he thinks on gay marriage. He totally supports it. Ask Pierre Poilievre what he thinks about Pride season, not even Pride Month. He totally accepts it. Ask Pierre Poilievre what he thinks about Soji 123, training your kids to be sexually active when they're like 7, 8 years old, and teaching them the ridiculous pronouns and the ridiculous 75 made-up genders. He's all for it. Pierre Poilievre is going to take every single agenda that Justin Trudeau took, and he's going to bring it and accelerate it. Mark my words. One of the very first things Pierre Poilievre is going to introduce when he has the maximum trust of the people is going to be digital ID. And they're going to do it in a way where conservatives aren't going to be able to speak out against it. They're going to say, oh, We're doing digital ID just for porn websites because, we don't want to have kids accessing porn websites because, you couldn't just use a credit card or a normal ID for that. They need to use a digital ID. And then the digital ID is going to spread for social media, for dating websites, and eventually it's going to be used to access the internet altogether, be able to access your job, be able to access your government payments. And that's another bill going through Congress right now, or the Senate and the House right now, that's telling everybody that if you do not participate in the digital ID and you do not participate in the mandatory vaccination or whatever other programs they want, you will no longer be entitled to any government benefits. That means you will not get an insurance, employment, injury, employment checks, or even your pension that you've paid into your entire life. Then they got the other law coming in where they don't even have to charge you with a crime. They just have to say that they believe that if you leave your house, you're going to be spreading hate and misinformation. Two of the most broadly abused terms by governments anywhere in the world. So someone like me that would like to go on tour and talk to people and tell people what's going on, well, they're going to deem me hateful and say I'm spreading dangerous information. And without even having to charge me with a crime, they can put an ankle monitor on me and keep me confined to my home on house arrest. Does that sound like the Canada anybody wants to grow up in? And for all the people that say, oh, Canada's our home, we need to defend it. Canada's a country that's made up 99% of immigrants that came from all other countries around the world. For instance, my grandparents came to Canada right after World War II from Italy. And it's pretty obvious that Italy was really destroyed during World War II. So it didn't have many prospects at the time, and it didn't have a very bright outlook on the future. So they came to Canada, this new country, and Italians are one of the people that helped build Canada to be what it is today. Now, if you're white in Canada, you're not only a minority, but you're a target. They say you have white privilege. They say that you have unfair share advantages in so many ways. But if you look 10 to 15 years from now, with them bringing in million-plus people from the third world that don't even speak English, you're going to be an actual minority in Canada. And they're still going to pretend that you have privilege. They're still going to give jobs to other people over you. They are coming under attack because they want to destroy what Canada is. And in order to destroy what Canada is, you need to destroy the traditions, you need to destroy the population, and you need to destroy our way of life. And that's exactly what they're doing. Canadians don't want to live in a 280 square foot condo. Most Canadians live in the suburbs in houses where 280 square feet might be the size of their master bedroom closet, not the entire place where they're supposed to live. But when you bring in somewhere from a third world country and you put them in a 280 square foot condo with granite countertops, all of a sudden they think they're in paradise. But that is not what we want here in Canada. That's what they're telling us we want. And now we have another pandemic looming. You think Pierre Poilievre is going to stop the lockdowns, or you think he's going to do the exact same thing that Justin Trudeau did? And this pandemic's even worse because it's going to start by decimating our food supply, chickens, eggs, milk, and beef, which coincidentally is right out of the World Economic Forum playbook that they want to destroy. So isn't it amazing how these pandemics not only provide government with utmost power, not only allow them to close down your business and control where you can go, but now it's going to control the type of food you're allowed to eat. And all of these tenets are part of the World Economic Forum agenda for the future of Canada. And unfortunately, 90+% of Canadians are either too stupid to understand, or they're in denial and they don't want to believe it. And they believe, oh, it's going to get better in a few years. Oh, someone's going to come to save us. Oh, it's just like this everywhere else besides Canada. Those are the three biggest lies I hear Canadians tell me. And I could talk to a million different Canadians and I'll hear the same 3 or 4 excuses. And that's what tells me that there's been a mass social engineering aspect to Canada in the last few decades to not only dumb us down, but to make us, and nobody will argue this, the most tolerant people on planet Earth. And what does tolerance even mean? Tolerance means putting up with something when you know it's wrong. How is that a virtue? That is not a virtue. That makes you a weak and harmless person. And a man is not supposed to be harmless. If you're harmless, that's not a virtue. that just takes you out of the equation. That means you're useless. A man
Weak.
is supposed to be dangerous, and they're supposed to be able to control that. So they're supposed to be able to be manly, protective, providing, but if need be, to stand up for their friends, stand up for their family, stand up for their country. But men in Canada, and they used the entire pandemic to change this, if you're a patriot, if you stand up for yourself, if you don't want to put up with what they're doing, now you're a domestic terrorist. But all the people that comply and do what they're told and put their mask on and take their jabs and stayed home and did everything they were told, they were dubbed as heroes. For the first time in human history, being a compliant slave makes you a hero. That's Canada. And Pierre Poilievre is not going to change anything with his adoptive gay parents. He's going to be exactly like Justin Trudeau, only he's going to be on the conservative side, so he's going to have more trust and leeway from the people to get away with even more. If Justin Trudeau said today, I want to introduce a digital ID, people would go all over him. But as soon as Pierre Poilievre says it once he's elected, everybody's going to be gushing over it because it's Pierre Poilievre and he's this new leader and he's going to take Canada in a whole new direction. The reality is, every year from now, you're going to see more and more people lose their homes. And the seniors, this is the best part, the seniors, their pensions are not going to come anywhere close to cover their financial needs. So we're going to see an emergence of a whole new era of what they call reverse mortgages. Most people haven't even heard of a reverse mortgage, but in the last 2 years, they've already increased by almost 400% in Canada. And I'm telling you that within the next 10 years, throughout North America, the reverse mortgage industry is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And its primary purpose is to stop the transfer of wealth from the older generation to the new generation and have the government and large corporations swallow up all the real estate. They don't want Canadians to own anything. In fact, they were right out and said that you will own nothing and be happy. And the reason they'll be happy is because you're too stupid to understand what happened, or you're too weak to stand up for yourself, so you'll just pretend like you're happy. But
okay, so let me stop you there, Chris, because you were talking about men being pretty much neutered societally in the last 10, 20 years, and the toxic masculinity tripe and all of that nonsense that came from media and government and Hollywood and all of that stuff. There's a guy that a lot of people look at as one of those masculine men who has been standing up for this country, and he started his own fan club / community called Diagolon. His name is Jeremy Mackenzie. The reason that you texted me about coming on the show last week, was that you wanted to tell us about him and Diagolon. So why don't we begin with that?
Okay, well, I'm all about integrity, I'm all about credibility, and I'm all about looking at people. And on the face, Jeremy seems like a great guy. He's very funny, he's very engaging. He talks a lot of truth on a lot of his podcasts. But when you look into his methods, and when you look into his history, and you look into what he actually did throughout the pandemic, everything becomes suspect. Because who is Jeremy Mackenzie? He started at 16 as a member of the army. So he's getting paid to go to Afghanistan, not because they were invading us, not because they were attacking us. We invaded Afghanistan so we could kill men, women, and children in their home country, so we could take over the heroin fields. Because I don't know who knows this, but over 90% of the world's heroin comes from Afghanistan. So we have Jeremy Mackenzie, a 16-year-old child, not even old enough to buy a beer, but given a gun and told to go murder people and being paid to murder people by the very same entities that are now destroying Canada. And that means that he was a government employee since age 16. He was taking orders since age 16. Fast forward to the pandemic, people like me were risking our lives, risking our freedom, risking everything to tour across the country to warn people, to try to give people ways of action, tell people to just say no, to introduce the term of united non-compliance. And even when we were stuck in our own provinces, remember when we weren't allowed to leave our own provinces? I took planes, I took helicopters, I smuggled myself across the border in tow trucks, and I made it to all of my events that I needed to all across country. And I was arrested almost 30 times for my actions. I faced over 80 charges for my actions. I was on 9 separate bails that were so stringent, it got to the point where if I breathed the wrong way, they could arrest me. Yet somehow I still made it to the trucker convoy, spent over a week there, spoke twice there. I still made it to the Coutts border crossing where I brought them hundreds of pounds of food, diesel, gasoline, water, and spoke there. Yet somebody like Jeremy McKenzie was literally hiding in his house for virtually the entire pandemic. But somehow, some way, Diagolon became so popular amongst the government, and in a bad way, when the trucker, right when they needed it, when the trucker convoy was hitting its peak in February 2021, and we were on the verge of overturning the
22.
mandates, and we were on the, sorry?
2022,
Yeah,
the
sorry,
convoy.
2020, my mistake, yeah.
And
And
Jeremy
when we were on the
McKenzie
verge of
he was at the convoy. I'm not sure for how long, but we know that Jeremy was there at some
He
point.
showed up at the convoy. He spent 95% of his time in his hotel room. He did not speak at the convoy. He was never on the front line. He did not deliver any supplies to any of the people. He was literally in a hotel in Ottawa doing podcasts about the convoy. And then guess what? On February 17th, 2022, they released an official Canadian anti-terror report citing Diagolon, Diagolon, which is a made-up country that Jeremy McKenzie admits he made up while high on edibles in one of his live podcasts as a joke. And they cited this so-called joke as a violent extremist group in Canada that was recruiting members at the trucker convoy, that was posing a threat to government buildings and even posing a threat to government officials. And Diagolon became the main justification for the largest and most aggressive police operation in Canadian history, which took place 24 hours later on February 18th, 2022. So Diagolon became the scapegoat and the reason for the government to come in there, arrest dozens of people, harm hundreds of people, get rid of hundreds of business licenses, freeze thousands of bank accounts. Yet coincidentally, Jeremy wasn't arrested and charged. None of his Diagolon members were arrested and charged until Coutts happened. When they wanted to make Diagolon look even worse, when they arrested 4 people in Coutts, they said, oh, they had body armor, and one of the body armor had a Diagolon patch on it. So Chris Lysak, who was labeled the head of security for all of Diagolon, was arrested. And Jeremy got arrested, I think, 4 or 5 times between 2020 and 2024. Most of them had nothing to do with helping people during the pandemic. It was mostly for selfish things like petty assault, criminal harassment, and all of these crimes that never went to trial, never really had any chance of jail time. Yet that didn't stop Jeremy from telling his supporters that he had $300,000 in legal fees. In fact, I sent you a screenshot of him talking to me where he claimed that he had $600,000 in legal fees, and he got it reduced to $300,000 because he got a discount. And he held himself a fundraiser where he got his own supporters to pay over $300,000 for his supposed legal fees. And when I challenged Jeremy and said that makes no sense, because I've been arrested almost 30 times, and I've had way more serious charges than you. I've actually gone to trial, and trial cost my lawyer over $5,000 a day, and I didn't spend over $300,000. So how the hell could you have spent $300,000 with a fraction of arrests and petty charges? He basically told me to go F myself. And I said, well, why don't you just call up your lawyer and ask him for a statement of your account? It'll take 30 seconds, and he'll show all the money you've paid out since. He was not willing to do that. He was willing to show off the brand new Chevrolet Silverado truck that he bought after his supposed thing for legal fees. And he did the same thing for Chris Lysak. Chris Lysak, who ended up pleading guilty to possession of a legal firearm, they wanted to raise $300,000 for his defense. So I don't know about how many people have been arrested before, but to defend yourself against an illegal gun charge is not going to cost you $300,000. So Jeremy is a liar. He's a cheat, and he defrauds his people. And how do I know he's a liar? Because when he came on my Telegram and I was telling basically the same reasons I've been telling you why Canada is not a good place to stay and it's only going to get worse, he started talking shit to me and started literally trying to defend Canada and say how it's going to get better. And there's a reason for this. If he tells his people the truth, well, they're not going to send him any more money. If you go to Jeremy Mackenzie's website, it's all about making money. Right at the top of his website, he has all his cryptocurrency addresses so you can send him untraceable donations. Right under there, he's got his store, which he conveniently calls the Grift Shop. Well, he tells everybody else they're grifters because they're out there making money. But he has a store he actually calls a Grift Shop, and he sells you made-in-China trinkets like a Diagolon ring for $120 that cost him maybe $5 each. And now that there's no more risk to his safety, no more risk to him getting arrested or anything like that. Now he's going on a tour across Canada. Why wasn't he touring across Canada during the pandemic when Canada needed him and Canadians needed him? Because he didn't want to put himself at risk. But now that he's piggybacked off the trucker convoy, piggybacked off the freedom movement, and piggybacked off his live shows, and he's got a little bit of popularity, he's planning on cashing in. And the funny part of all is if you had a private conversation with Jeremy, he will tell you that he knows Canada's going down the tubes, and he's literally just trying to make as much money as possible while he has the ability to do so, and he already has an exit strategy for leaving Canada. But someone like me who wants to leave Canada while still maintaining a presence and a property here is a coward, is a faggot, is all these other derogatory terms. And then I found out Jeremy went on his private Telegram channel, which you have to pay for, by the way. And if you want to meet Jeremy Mackenzie on his tours, you got to pay $100 per ticket to meet him. So everything Jeremy does is about money. So do you think he's going to go and tell Canadians, you're stupid, Canadians, you've let all this happen, and Canadians, your country is going to get shittier over the next 5 to 10 years? Or is he going to tell Canadians, everything's going to be all right, we're going to fix the problem, we got hope, we're going to lead you out of this? So they keep sending him money. Jeremy Mackenzie's a character. He's not even a real person. And when that character starts spewing lies, that's when I had a problem. Because somebody sent me a screenshot of Jeremy talking smack about me on his personal Instagram or Telegram page that said that he had challenged me to a formal debate about the status of Canada, and I had declined. He then went on to say that I was a cokehead, that I'm secretly Jewish and got raped by my Jewish father, everything he could to try to discredit me. And Jeremy appeals to the lowest common denominator in Canada by using hate and racism. He refers to black people as the N-word. He refers to Indigenous Canadians as chubs and tells them to go back to their reservations where they can huff gas and drink booze. He refers to Indian immigrants as the lowest form of life. And he has many of his podcasts. And I even sent you a court document for one of his members that got arrested, Gary Schill, where it clearly has private conversation between Jeremy and Gary, where Jeremy is supporting a full-out civil war, a full-out killing of all non-whites and so-called race traitors. And for those of you that don't know what a race traitor is, it's somebody like me who was married to an Asian woman. Because I wasn't married to a white woman, that would make me a race traitor, and under Jeremy's circumstances would have me ready to be killed. And while he's talking about civil war from the safety of a podcast, and he's getting other people to go out on the front lines and fight for him, he had the audacity to tell me that he has hundreds of people organized across Canada, and most of them are military veterans, and they are posed and ready to take back the government. Well,
where did he tell you that? Did he tell you that on Telegram in a private conversation, or was that public? Do we have access?
He said it both publicly and privately, and it's in the court documents that I sent you itself. If you read through it, he's talking about creating militias and training them to fight and training them to go against the government. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a giant psyop and a giant trap to me, because how are hundreds of people around the country going to take over the government? You know what they're going to do? They're going to get arrested, and they're going to provide the government a wonderful mainstream media story of how one man's planning an insurrection, and it's going to provide the government leeway to make even more freedom-crushing laws while pretending that they're the victim, when in fact the government's been doing this all to ourselves. So at the very least, Jeremy's a very convenient scapegoat for the government, and more than likely, he's never stopped taking orders from the government like he did when he was 16 in the military, and he's just acting like he's anti-government. Because when you're promoting civil war, when you're promoting race war, when you're promoting insurrection against the country, and when you've been caught lying over and over and over again, well, there goes your credibility. Thankfully for Jeremy, he's a pretty funny guy, so he can hide all of this with comedy. But if you talk to his supposed girlfriend, Morgan Guptill, who goes by Morgan May, you can see right through her. She's not funny at all. She just comes across as cold, calculating, and evil. And that's why they make such a good couple. She runs all the hit pieces for him on Diagolon. And in fact, they have an entire team of a damage control team that goes after people like me and tries to discredit us. And if that wasn't bad enough, why does Diagolon use the symbol of the goat? Goat, which is Baphomet, which is a statue that's outside every single church of Satan around the world. They use that as their logo, proudly, the goat named Philip. And then Jeremy Mackenzie has a giant 666 sticker tattooed on his friggin' helmet from his motorcycle. I have an Archangel Michael tattooed on my neck. So it's quite obvious who I serve. If I had a giant 666 tattoo on my neck, people would probably call me satanic. But when you call Jeremy out on his satanic symbolism, satanic way of lying to everybody, satanic way of trying to make money and defrauding his own supporters. And why is he doing that, by the way? Jeremy plans on leaving Canada too. He just doesn't want to tell you that. Because if he talks to you like I talk to you, Canada's finished and it's all your fault, you're not going to send him any more money. But if he gives you false hope and he presents himself as this false messiah that's going to save you, you're going to keep sending him your hard-earned money. And when he has enough of that money, he's just going to leave Canada. And he's going to go somewhere where he's going to have a more prosperous life. And Canadians are going to be left holding the bag. So that's my problem with Jeremy. Not that he's fleecing people for money, but that he's lying to people. He knows better. And when he lied about me and said that I was afraid to debate him, what did I do? I hired a law firm in Canada to create a contract for a legal debate, a professional debate, where we would both get 2 5-minute rounds uninterrupted, plus a 3-minute round conclusion. He doesn't want to have that debate under any circumstances. He wants me to debate him on his live channel where I'm calling in on a phone. He's on video. So already the people can't even see me. They can only hear me. It's all his audience watching. He can interrupt me at will, talk over me at will, shut down my microphone at will, and continue to make jokes about anything I say. That's not a debate. That's not a debate at all. So when I put forth an actual contract, and every single day I had him and his members of Diagolon saying, Chris, where's the contract? Chris, where's the contract? When I put that contract in his hands, he pretended like I am still the one backing out of the debate, where all he needed to do was sign the contract, and we could have that debate virtually anywhere in Canada. All it takes is one moderator, one timer, him talking for 5 minutes uninterrupted, me talking for 5 minutes uninterrupted, one more round of that, and voila, our debate's done. But Jeremy tries to make it seem like it's an impossible thing and it can't happen. And in order to complicate the matters further, Jeremy tacked on the condition that he would only debate me if I would have an MMA fight against him, which I had no problem doing because I like fighting. I've been training my whole life. People don't know this. So I said, sure, you want that? We'll do the debate first and we'll have the MMA fight after. So I added into the contract, and I've sent you the contract, that we can have an MMA fight. So Jeremy was looking for any excuse to get out of it. He's like, oh, I'm 5'9", 187 pounds. There's no way I could make weight at 155 pounds for a professional fight. First of all, Jeremy's really around 5'7". He doesn't weigh anywhere near 180 pounds. And if you look at the UFC or any mixed martial arts, there's guys that are over 6 feet tall that can make weight for a 155-pound fight, because the weigh-in is 24 hours before the fight. They simply dehydrate themselves, and then the next day when they go into the ring, they're around 175 pounds. So for Jeremy to try to pretend like he couldn't make 175 pounds was bullshit. So then I even put a clause into the fight that said he could come in 30 pounds overweight and I'll still fight him, and he still won't sign the contract because he does not want to fight me. He does not want to debate me, but he went on his private Telegram again and told everybody that I'm the one that backed out. The guy who spent money and took the time to hire the lawyers and create a 6-page contract to create the most fair and equitable debate and fight possible is somehow the one that doesn't want it to happen. And when you try to get Jeremy to explain why he lies so much, he hides behind comedy. When you try to get Jeremy to explain why he uses symbolic things straight out of Satanism, like the Baphomet goat with red eyes, and even the 666 symbol, which if you type in 666 into a dictionary, it will tell you it is the mark of the beast. He tries to tell you something ridiculous, like it really means friends, family, forever, which is a death by dishonor rock song. But if you look that up on the internet, they have a different logo. It's 6.6.6, not to be confused with 666. So Jeremy has all the telltale signs of a government honeypot agent. Jeremy has all the telltale signs of a liar, a thief, a fraud. But somehow we're supposed to trust Jeremy. We're supposed to listen to Jeremy. We're supposed to follow Jeremy. We're supposed to give him our money. And we're supposed to trust that this is his word, by the way, hundreds of organized men around Canada are ready to take back the government. Nothing could be more ridiculous and further from the truth. The reality is Jeremy Mackenzie is a personality. He's a comedian, and he found a shtick where he can steal money from his supporters. He doesn't care about Canada. He doesn't care about his supporters. If he cared about Canada, he would have been touring during the pandemic when Canada needed him most and Canadians needed him most. What did he do? He did his live show, safe from behind closed doors, not wanting to get arrested, not wanting to have to go to jail. Jeremy Mackenzie is a fraud in every sense of the word, and I feel sorry for the people that are listening to him because there's a lot of religious people that follow him. And what is the number one thing that the Bible tells us? Do not worship false idols. And there couldn't be more of a false idol than Jeremy Mackenzie, a man that can't even tell the truth about anything, a man who's afraid to have an actual debate against me. Shadow, you could be the moderator for our debate. I don't think he could call you, I don't think he could say that you're on my side or his side, but he will not sign that contract to have an actual debate between me and him because he knows that if I get 5 minutes to talk about the situation in Canada and talk about his situation, he's going to have things brought up into the public forum and on record that he's not going to be able to answer for. And he probably won't even be able to fill in his 5 minutes in his talking because I guarantee you he agrees with me that Canada is past its peak. He agrees with me that Canada is on the decline. He agrees with me that the best choice of action most Canadians have if they want to have a better life is to leave Canada. But he's not going to say that because then his career is going to be over. He relies on Canadians sending him their hard-earned money, and that's how he gets by in life. I didn't do that. I paid for my own legal fees. People say I was a grifter because I sold merch while I was on tour. I sold merch while I was on tour because that was the only way I could pay for my tour. Now that I'm not on tour, you don't see me having a grift shop online where I'm trying to sell flags and patches and rings or charging people to be on my Telegram or giving out my crypto addresses and saying, please send me your money. No, and I paid for my own legal fees, which I guarantee were a lot higher than Jeremy. So Jeremy is one lie after another. He has very, very weird satanic symbolism. His girlfriend, I'm sure you talked to her. I'm sure you could see right through her. She is not a nice person. She comes across as cold, sinister, calculated, and will say anything. So these are the kind of people that Canadians need to be more weary of because everybody knows politicians are liars. Everybody knows politicians will take advantage of you. But people like Jeremy that infiltrate the freedom movement under the guise of being funny, which he is admittedly at some point, can get in there and he can win your hearts, he can win your minds, he can win your trust. And that's a very dangerous thing because then he can convince you to do things like create a militia that has no chance of actually overthrowing the government, but every chance of getting you charged and arrested and put in jail for a very long time and allowing the government to act like the victim once again and create even more freedom-crushing laws that we don't need any more of in Canada.
You know what, Chris? You bring up a very good point, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know, it's people are confused a lot of times. I'm looking at the comments here that are coming out, and a lot of them are saying this is a shame that, you know, two of the leading voices in this movement are in opposition to each other. You're calling out what you see as a truth. How do people use their discernment to figure out who's doing actual good for what we're trying to achieve here, which is get our country back, and those who are just grifters, as you say Jeremy Mackenzie is?
Well, it's very simple. I always tell the truth. I've always told the truth. I tell you the truth when you don't want to hear it. I tell you the truth when it's going to make you offended and even hate me. Someone like Jeremy will always tell you what you want to hear. He will always give you the hope you want. He will always put himself in a position as your savior. And he will tell you, oh, leaving Canada is cowardly, when I know for a fact he's planning on leaving Canada himself. So this is a battle right now of good versus evil. And I'm on the side of good, because I'll say mean things to people, but I'll say truthful things to people. You might be able to call me an asshole. You might be able to call me harsh, but you'll never be able to call me a liar. I've never lied about anything, and I stand behind everything I said. Jeremy is the complete opposite. Jeremy will tell people exactly what they want to hear to gain their trust, to gain their popularity, so that he can take advantage of them financially and otherwise. So that's what we got here. People trying to pretend that me and Jeremy are on the same side. We're both fighting for Canada. The reality is we are complete polar opposites of each other. I'm fighting for God and truth, and he's fighting for Satan and lies. And the Bible warned everybody, do not worship false idols. I don't want people to worship me. I've told people from day one, do not look at me as your savior. I am just someone who's giving you the information that you will require so you can save yourselves. And I've been warning you since day one, and even Jeremy used to say this back in the day, that if anybody tells you they're coming to save you, that's when you need to be suspicious. That's when you need to start using discernment. And Jeremy, with his popularity, has now transitioned into that false savior. So when people say that me and Jeremy are on the same side, we're both fighting for Canada, that couldn't be further from the truth. To me, I believe Canada is already lost. The Canada that we had in the 1990s in peak has been in a downfall ever since. And it was a slow decline at first. So we were still a wonderful country by 2012, 2015. But when the pandemic hit, everything changed. And in post-pandemic Canada, we are now one of the worst countries in the world, and it's only going to get worse. In 7 to 10 years, we will not even be in the top 100 list on the Numbeo Quality of Life Index. And all these other supposed third world countries like Mexico, where admittedly 20, 30 years ago were absolute shitholes, because I've been going there since I was 21. These places are now emerging as paradise. You think it's an accident that the Mexican peso is the strongest performing currency in the last 2 years? You think it's an accident that international investment in places like Mexico is coming in at billions and billions of dollars while all the money is flowing out of Canada? I know of a gentleman in Canada. He had a legacy business here. His father just turned 91 years old. Their business had been here for almost 70 years. And he asked me, what should I do with my business? He's like, I want to keep it until my father died because of sentimental value. I said, well, if you want my business advice, I would say have your accountants and all your other people run the numbers, and you're going to see that in 2025, you're not going to be able to grow your business, and the costs for your business are going to rise exponentially. So you might still make money, but you're going to make a lot less money next year than you made this year. And within the following years, you're going to make less and less until you're actually losing money. So you're probably better off closing your business down. This man called me about a month after that, and he said, guess what, Chris? You are absolutely right. I closed down the business. I auctioned off all my assets. I sold my private jets, and I'm leaving Canada. This is a 9-figure company, and this is one of thousands and thousands of people who are millionaires and billionaires who are leaving Canada. And they have the money that they can weather any storm here, but they don't want to put up with it. They don't want to put up with the lower standard of living. They don't want to put up with all these new laws that are going to destroy freedom, when there are so many other places around the world that they can go, that in the last 20, 30 years, as Canada has been on a rapid decline and now hitting a new gear of decline, there's these supposed third world countries like Dominican Republic, Malaysia, Dubai, that are offering people better livelihoods, better taxes, better investments, better everything. What does Canada really have? What did it always have? We have
Resources.
the worst weather around the world. We
Yeah.
have some of the lowest quality of food around the world, but people liked it because you could at least make a life here. Now, the average person is going to be paying rent on a 280 square foot condo. They're not going to be able to eat meat, dairy, chicken, or beef because the World Economic Forum said so. And they're going to be giving up their car for a bicycle. So their carbon footprint means they're not going to be leaving a 3-mile radius around where they live.
Chris,
So,
why
sorry,
did they
I don't
target
wanna live
Canada?
like that.
Why did they target Canada? Why was Canada the world's example? What's behind that?
It's very simple. Canada is the largest landmass in the world. We have the largest fresh water supply in the world. We have a massive oil. And what they're not telling us is we have trillions and trillions of dollars of rare earth minerals ready to be mined. So what they want to do in Canada is they want to completely demoralize and destroy the population. And then the government can go and divide up all the spoils. Canada is the prize of the world. And Canadians have become the target because we've been dumbed down and weakened and demoralized to the point that we are the stupidest and most tolerant of anybody in the world. The government could literally come into somebody's house, steal from their table, rape their wife right in front of them, and the average Canadian man won't even do anything to stop it. The woman will be the one fighting back. That's what we've come to because men have been so demasculated, toxic masculinity, the destruction of the family unit. I could not tell you, I had so many girls trying to talk to me in the last few months. And by the time they're 25 years old, they all have babies. And they have no father in the picture. And the baby is usually of a different race. And I thought I was going crazy. I thought I was exaggerating the numbers in my head. So I looked it up. And in North America right now, in the 60s, less than 3% of children were even born out of wedlock. So they had two parents and the parents were married. Nowadays, 40% of all live births are to single mothers out of wedlock. So they have one parent.
You mentioned this
Sorry?
off the top of the show. We've already gone down this road. But what about this mass immigration coming into Canada? It's obviously by design. Is that for more demoralization, or are there other reasons as well?
It's for demoralization and it's for replacement. If you look up on if you go to Google right now and type in UN replacement migration, a document will pop up that you can download, and they use the excuse that Canadians aren't reproducing fast enough, that they need to replace us. And they want to replace us with third worlders that don't share our traditions, don't share our religion, don't share our views, and never had a standard of living like Canadians had. So they'll be much more accepting of a lower standard of living. They'll be much more accepting of the so-called new Canada. So they are literally replacing Canadians' traditions, cultures, and our actual European heritage with something completely different. And they try to pretend that diversity is our strength, but is it really? Has Canada gotten better since they brought in these millions and millions of people, or has it gotten worse? Obviously, it's gotten worse, and they want to make Canada a nation of 100 million people before the end of the century. What do you think that's going to do for the quality of life for the average person in Canada? It's going to be decimated. And Canada is the model for the rest of the world to follow. So in my opinion, barring a full-out revolution, which in Canadians is about a 0.01% probability, the best thing anybody can do if they want to have a better life and they want their children to have a better life is to relocate to another country. And a lot of Canadians don't like hearing that because they've lived here their whole life, just like I have. I lived in Canada 40 years. You think I want to leave here? But just like my grandparents, they lived in Italy for generations. You think they wanted to leave there? No.
What is Turkey? What is Turkey like? You're in Turkey right now. What is that like? Or is it the different completely with the mentality? Are they accepting any of this new world order crap or no?
It's a bit of a mixed bag because in Turkey, the people are a lot more ready to riot in the streets, but they're still trying to impose the World Economic Forum agenda on them here. Being here as a tourist is fantastic. Living here is probably worse than Canada right now, but I'd say within 10 to 15 years, living in Turkey will probably be better than living in Canada. What do I mean by that? Food prices, gas prices, electricity, all the essentials that you need to live in Turkey are very, very cheap. And they did that because they want to prevent rioting in the streets. But in order to get the World Economic Forum agenda of no private vehicle ownership and no private home ownership, since the pandemic, the price of cars and the price of buying houses has gone up almost 500%.
Whoa.
It is that ridiculous that I looked up two identical cars, one in Turkey, one in Canada. A 2011 Mercedes-Benz E350 with 200,000 kilometers. In Canada, you could buy that for around $11,000 Canadian, which is basically 3 to 4 months' salary for the average person. In Turkey, that exact same car is 50,000 euros, or over $70,000 for a 14-year-old low-model Mercedes with almost 300,000 kilometers on it.
Why do you think it's going to be better in Turkey in 15 years than here? Because people are more willing to fight back?
Because A, people are more willing to fight back. B, they're not going to be able to raise cost of living on all the other essentials like food, electricity, gas, and all the rest of it. And people are just going to hold on to the homes they have and pass it on to their families and bring their families into their home. Because in Turkey, it's a lot more common that you'll have more than one family in a home. And in Turkey, it's a lot more common that you'll have dual income, wife and a husband working. And as long as there's a large number of home ownership as it is right now in Turkey, so a lot of those people will be able to collect that equity and pass it on to their next generation. For people that have cars here, they're just going to have to keep them and keep fixing them and keep fixing them. So it's not going to be as drastic. In Canada, they're making all the essentials that you need, like your food, your electricity, your gas, your rent and mortgage, go through the roof. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why they introduced variable mortgage rates, which looked at like a good idea at the time, and then saw people get a $1,500 a month payment go up to over $5,000 a month. That's not by design. That's not by accident. That's by design. And the whole reverse mortgage scheme is brilliant because they know that Canadians who have worked their whole life and want to relax in their golden years and don't want to be put in a home are more than likely to say screw you to their children, go on the reverse mortgage, get thousands of dollars a month for their house, and then by the time they pass away, now there's $300,000-$400,000 in debt in this house that their children simply can't afford. So now the government gets to sell it to a large third party, and they're going to do that to entire neighborhood. Our government is so intent on building rental-only properties, and I'm a developer, so I know this, and I'm a developer of low-rise residential. If I wanted to build a high-rise building right now, and I wanted to make it rental-only, the government will give me an HST and a GST rebate. That's the equivalent of about 13-14% in rebate on this development. When you're doing a building development of the same category, you're lucky to have a 9 or 10% profit margin. So the government is literally using our tax dollars to provide incentives to these developers to build rental-only properties, and then has other large entities ready to buy these properties to loan it out to the people. In fact, Justin Trudeau just created a new program where he gave over $1.5 billion to the government to buy private residential rental properties, so now the government could get into the business of renting people homes. If that's not communism by absolute definition, then I don't know what is.
What does China have to do with all of this? I mean, there's been this talk about Chinese infiltration now for years and years and years, not just the last couple of years. It seems they're entrenched in all of our institutions, our universities, our police, our government. How much do they have to do with all of this?
Well, did you not see the clip of Trudeau literally saying he admires China's dictatorship?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, but how deep are they in it is what I'm asking.
They're so deep that I got banned off of TikTok in 3-4 weeks, and it's supposedly a Chinese platform. And if you even try to type the name Chris Sky into TikTok, it gives you the same error messages if you try to type Hitler into TikTok. We know that China messages mattered in all our elections. We know that China buys off our politicians for pro-Chinese policy. We know that China infiltrated our biolabs where the Wuhan virus came from. We know that China basically owns Canada. They have Chinese police stations operating within Canada to spy on their own citizens. And we know that China is responsible for introducing the social credit score in Canada, which they're first applying to businesses, but then when the digital ID comes out, it's going to be applying to individuals as well. So China is the model for Canada, and Canada is the Chinese model for the rest of the Western world. And although I don't believe we can save Canada barring a revolution, what I do believe is by doing shows like yours and by doing shows in other countries around the world and doing what I did with the pandemic, giving people a step-by-step of exactly what's going to happen. And when people see exactly what I say is coming true, they're not going to want the same for their communities. And places like Europe, thankfully, places like Italy are still 90% Italian. Even though they're trying to bring all these immigrants, it's still 90% Italian. People like France, even though they're talking about civil war, they still have the euro there, which is worth 1.5 times what our currency is worth. So and they still have gold reserves. So only Canada is in a very unique position where we have one of the worst currencies, one of the highest debts, one of the worst performing economies, no gold reserves, and absolutely no plan in the next decade to actually improve our situation.
So let me ask you. You've been all over the place, traveling the world for a few years now. What's the best place, in your opinion, if somebody's looking to relocate? Because I get this all the time, every single day. We want to leave Canada. I've heard of a family, somebody was talking about a family who had moved to Russia and are now doing incredibly well. They're farmers. They bought land in Russia and they're doing very well. But who wants to move to Russia? Where would people go?
Well, to be honest, Russia has a much higher standard of living than Canada right now, and they have a much better run government. They're running a budget surplus, and they have enough money on hand that they can pay off their debt tomorrow. And that doesn't even include the $300 or $400 billion that are frozen in sanctions. But if you even go to Moscow's business district, which is the most expensive part of Moscow, for 175,000 Canadian, you can get a condo that will absolutely blow your mind. And the average person living in Moscow makes around the average of 25,000 Canadian a year, while a Canadian makes around 50,000 a year. And that condo that's 175K in Russia would be $1 million plus in Canada. We now have what they're trying to get people to sign on to 40-year mortgages in Canada. So Russia is one place where people could go if you can survive the cold and you want to learn how to speak the language, that you can live a much higher quality of life than Canada. And Russia's moving in the right direction while Canada's moving in the wrong direction. A lot of people are going to Mexico. A lot of people still have this scene in their mind where Mexicans are flooding into the United States at massive amounts and trying to escape Mexico and become American citizens. The reality is there are now more people going from United States to Mexico than there are Mexicans coming to the United States. And that's because Mexico is like an absolute paradise compared to Canada and the US. The only problem is so many of us are moving there that it's now the cost of living is starting to increase in Mexico. Then there's places like Dominican Republic. Then there's places like Malaysia. Then there's places like Dubai. There's all these places around the world that people never thought of. And when you say what's the best place, well, that's going to depend on exactly who you are. Are you going by yourself? Are you going with just a wife and a wife? Are you going with a family of 4? You have to decide what kind of life you want and what's best for yourself. And unfortunately for Canadians that are lazy as fuck, that means doing a little bit of research around the world. But you can I got a residency in Mexico. I've got a passport now in Colombia. So I am not stuck in Canada. I can go through my heritage and get an EU passport for Italy for the whole Schengen zone. And why would I do that? Because we know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they do the next pandemic. And if you have a next pandemic, but you have citizenship in Mexico, Colombia, Italy, and Canada, you still have access to the entire world. And you won't have to be jabbed to fly there because they can't stop you from going home. So international nomadism is now a new thing that people have never even considered before that needs to be at the forefront of people's planning and investment. If you can create a life, roots, investments, and residual income in multiple nations, now you're truly free. because one of those nations is always going to be better off than Canada, if not all of them, and you will no longer be stuck here. When I got stuck in Canada between October 31st and the middle of May, it was the most depressing time of my life. I felt like a prisoner in my home country. I felt like Canada is never going to be the same again, and it's not going to be the same again. For anybody out there that believes that Canada is going to ever return to the glory days of the 1990s, you're dreaming. You have decades coming where your life is going to get worse every year. Your cost of living is going to go up every year. Your standard of living is going to drop every year. And in the middle of all that, they're going to throw in a pandemic here, a wild recession here. We're already in recession and they're not even telling you about it. So Canada is now one of the most corrupt countries, the worst countries in the world to live. And within 10 years, it's not even going to be recognizable as a third world country. It's going to be considered a banana republic.
All right, man. Thanks. Got to get going. Chris, thank you for the truth. Thank you for the eye-opening words. And just so you know, Jeremy Mackenzie will be coming on tomorrow night. He's going to watch this episode. He's going to rebut what you said. And if you do want me...
Let him what I said. Why won't he ask him one question? Why will you not sign the contract for a simple and fair debate? Say, you'll be the moderator. Why won't he meet me in a public forum, man to man, sitting on one side of a table each, and you're going to be there with a time clock, and you're going to make sure neither of us interrupt each other, and why won't he debate me for 2 rounds of 5 minutes and a round of 3 minutes? What he keeps saying that I'm putting all these obstacles in place. There's no obstacle, Jeremy. The only obstacle is you being scared, you not wanting to do it because you know you're going to get exposed on, number one, that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Number two, all the shady shit he's done. And number three, all the lies he's done are going to come out, and he's not going to have an answer for any of it. So it will be the most embarrassing day of his life, and he knows it. So, and then he's going to come back and say, oh, I don't want to debate Chris. I just want to fight Chris. I'm down for that too, but after the debate. Why won't he have the debate? It's a very simple question. Why does he want to only have it online where he can control everything? Why will he not let somebody like you be a moderator? I did all these debates when I was running for mayor, and I know how debates go, and I did very well in the debates. So why is he so against that? I want him to explain to you, explain to his followers why he is so scared of having a simple, fair, balanced debate on the status of Canada and what most Canadians should do to better their lives.
I'll throw it out there tomorrow night for sure. Thank you, Chris, for coming on, and hopefully we talk again soon, man. Maybe we'll have that debate sooner rather than later.
And don't accept his idea where he says, oh, I tried to debate Chris on my live and he won't come on. We know why he wants me to debate him on his live. He's on video, I'm on phone. He can mute my mic. He can interrupt me. He can talk over me whenever he wants, and his audience is just going to cheer him on. That's not a debate.
No, he won't be able to get away with that with me. I know better than that. And it does need to be a neutral, an absolutely neutral platform. Absolutely. I totally agree. Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
All right. There is Chris Sky, everybody. And maybe, just maybe, we will have that debate. I'll mention it to Jeremy Mackenzie tomorrow night. He'll be coming on the show. Hopefully. I don't know. I mean, he said, he's looking forward to it. But after watching what Chris had to say tonight, maybe Jeremy will decide he doesn't want to come on. I don't know. I'll tell you more about that tomorrow. There's all kinds of things going on, you guys, and I still have very, very much more to cover in the extension on shadowdavis.com, and that's going to start in just a couple of minutes. We have a Liberal MP who announced a few days ago that he is not going to be seeking re-election in his Toronto riding. But why? Well, first of all, he's 76 years old. His name is John McKay, by the way. 76 years old, so we can totally understand the guy wants to stand down from public service. He's been an MP for 27 years. But he made some very interesting comments a year ago to a Global News reporter, and this could be one of the reasons that he is stepping down. We also have, remember last night I was talking about the Tommy Robinson scandal, Tommy Robinson arrest, the UK freedom fighter who's in Canada supposedly doing a speaking tour. He did one event in Calgary, then got arrested by undercover Calgary police. Rebel News was there to cover it. To me, it looked very fishy. And I knew there was some backstory to that, but I didn't know all of it. And so we are going to explore that in the extension as well tonight for all access members at shadowdavis.com. Dallin Leger. You guys know Dallin. He's been on the show a couple of times. He is a freedom fighter, truth seeker in Saskatchewan. And in Langenburg, Saskatchewan, which is very close to Yorkland, very close to Yorkton, Manitoba, there were 5 kids who wore straight pride t-shirts to school one day about 2-3 weeks ago after Pride season had just started. Dallin tells me that the principal there handled it very well, but one of the teachers, who is very pro-LGBTQ, went absolutely batshite crazy, followed these kids in his car, and began to berate them. This teacher was suspended for a week, but now he's back at work with absolutely no penalty, except for that suspension for a week or just a few days. And so there was a walkout in Langenburg School today, and Dallin Leger and possibly a couple of the kids and maybe some family members, the straight pride kids, will be joining us on the show tomorrow night. So make sure you're here. 8 o'clock Central tomorrow night for another Shadow at Night live stream. If you're not joining on shadowdavis.com in the extension beginning in just a couple of minutes. If not, I love you all. I appreciate you all. I'll catch you tomorrow night. For you all access members, I will see you in 2 minutes' time. We'll be right back.